thank all of you who were there in pickets outside Limerick Jail, which was absolutely fantastic, because even though I didn't hear what was going on, but the prisoners and the visitors, they knew what was going on, and you have no idea what a difference it makes to actually have support, because I think that everything is very much that if you do something, does anyone support you? If you're not supported, then what you do it has no meaning or no function. But if there is support, immediately then it actually uplifts the reason why you're there. I mean, there haven't been all that many political, non-violent, direct action prisoners. I mean, we've had Mary Kelly, we've had Deirdre Clancy, and we had Noon, and we had Karen. And so in a way, me being there has kind of uplifted the reputation of Limerick as a kind of good political prisoners who are there for the good of the community as a whole. So I really would stress upon you the importance of supporting political prisoners. I know that you can't go out picketing on everywhere, but even sending postcards and letters, because it's very, very important, because the letters that come, remember, is that they're actually going all around the world. Then when you have the envelope saying political prisoner and the jail, as each section it comes, then you don't know who's being influenced by that. And then suddenly when it comes to the jail, it's got to go through the censor, and then the prison officers have to deliver it, and the prisoners see you getting post. So it's a wonderful, wonderful journey of protest, actually. So our next case is on June the 24th. So I just thought, as John said, as I'm in the theatre, and I really do regard our whole little business of the runway as very much part of theatre. Because I certainly know that Ed, that whatever we do, because society is actually organised as a theatre. When we go into the court, everything there is programmed. You have the judge, and the judge knows what part the judge has to play. You have the solicitors, you have the prison officers. Everyone is slotted into a part. And then who writes the script? The stage writes the script. So therefore, if you're going to upset their play and get them to go into your play, you then have to rewrite the script. And they then become very, very confused because they're actually not used to it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm wearing my Guantanamo suit, because this is a symbol really of one of the reasons why we were there. And one of the reasons why we were on the runway is, of course, because of the complicity of the Irish government in allowing the rendition flights to go through Shannon. And the rendition flights, of course, were human beings who were snatched up in an arbitrary way, and sometimes as booty, and flown through Shannon to go to Guantanamo Bay, where many of them are still there. There's at least 140 still there. I mean, it's absolutely criminal. And I do feel that the fact that the government have been complicit is one of the most serious violation of human rights that really this country has committed, that I hope that we will think about about seriously. So what I would like to say, so it's all right for us because John and Ed and Tim, they have been in a way having the fringe theatre at the roundabout, where we have always able to be there. And during that time, we have then been able to be conscious of what's happening inside Shannon. I mean, like Ed and Tim are constantly looking out and being able to tell us what planes are there, so that we are slowly entering into a different world. Because I know it's very, very simple and very easy to actually not fully understand about what is going on. Therefore, unless you really get yourself into a situation, the real enormity of the damage of what is happening at Shannon, we do not really understand. If it happens somewhere else, and the papers are all there, so it's all quite easy, and it's quite easy for us to condemn other countries about violations. But when it's happening in our own country, what is the reason why we imaginatively, or what is actually stopping us from being able objectively to be able to look at this violation not only to prisoners, but the violation to us, because we now are complicit. I mean, I don't really want to go on about the effect of torture. Maybe I will go on, actually. I mean, I'm very glad that actually I went to jail. I'm very glad that I had that experience of going through the process. And the prison officer, he had breakfast. He didn't come in, he just slid it on the floor to where I was. He wouldn't even hand me the food. And so once again, you're having the slow degradation of yourself as a person. So he's looking at me as if I'm an animal. And that's exactly what you do with the dog, is that you actually slide the food along. When I said I wanted to go to the toilet, he said, it's there. And I said, but I've nothing to wipe my hands. No, well, that's none of my business. Now, the thing with the breakfast is that there was nothing to drink. And when I realised nothing to drink, I began banging on the door, nothing. And so that actually we didn't get anything to drink until we came into Limerick to be put into the court. Now, I also began to understand is the thing of not giving us water means that we become dehydrated. And once you become dehydrated, you actually then begin to lose a sense of reality. And you actually can become distorted then, is that when you're actually appearing inside. Now, all these things, the other thing I found that when I was in there about the bell, and you're locked up, and the bell wasn't working. So to know that you are locked in a cell with a bell that's not working, where actually anything can happen. Now, all you are totally beholden on a prison officer coming along at the time and seeing if you are open. So these are very, very minor things. But if you take the minor things and you actually then translate them into the bigger things, is that suddenly we realize that those CIA documents on torture, they really apply to everything, whether it's our guards or our prison officers, the same way as in Limerick, as I was saying, the sensory deprivation. Now, the extraordinary thing is how very much human beings can actually put up with. That we really put up with a lot without actually really understanding this is not right. I mean, it's not right that prison officers, that the Gardaí should slide my food along the floor. These things are not right. And yet we then, in a way, get into their play of not realising about what's happening to us. And that's the reason why I'm so glad I went through that process, to actually understand and to be able to identify with the complicity with what our state is doing inside Limerick jail. Now, the prison visitors did say is that one of the things is all this concrete. You never experience natural habitat. And I think that Micheál can vouch on that, about where the women are. It is extraordinary, isn't it? The actual cramped situation. And Limerick is a high security jail, so that some of the women there are really going to be there for years. For them never to be able to be outside and look at what we look at. The trees, sky, birds, insects, to have that. Now, to my mind, that is torture, because in particular, for women, there is nothing soft or tactile inside the jail for women. Now, of course, the governor said is that they had plans to build a new jail, and they've got land and everything, but that just isn't the will, because nobody cares about women prisoners, because there's only, about 28 or 30 of us. So we're on the very bottom of the Yes, on the bottom of the pile, and nobody cares. Well, now, but what is the effect? What is the effect of this? So, in a kind of way, is that what is happening at Shannon, and the fact that we have allowed the government to be complicit with this torture. Of course, we see little embryos of it here. I mean, the two actually go together. I think that Mandela said, to really understand your state, you actually have to go to jail and actually find out how the state operates and treats its people in the jail. So to go back to the kind of theatrical things about it, so I'll just read a few little statements that I made so you'll understand why Niall and I did what we were doing. So this is the statement on the 11th of December. I am making a citizen's arrest on you, Patrick Durkin, District Court, Ennis, for making Irish people active allies and participants in illegal wars. So this is my judge. So I thought I might as well change the play and put my own scenario in. So, I mean, this is the other thing of how we actually regain our freedom. Anyway, you ruled that I did interfere with the proper use of Shannon Airport. That makes you complicit in supporting the criminal acts at Shannon Airport, as you have ignored the following: the Nuremberg Principle, the UN Convention Against Torture, the European Court, Council of Europe, the Charter of Human Rights, the Irish Constitution, contrary to Article 29. Obama thanks the Irish government for its support of Shannon. It shows the Irish government have put the interests of the US above the freedom and safety of the Irish people. I think that's kind of quite clear, and I don't think it's an exaggeration, and I don't think it's melodrama or anything else. I think it's exactly, what's happening. Now, the other thing is that now we're worried about is that we were told by actually our solicitor that when we were on the runway, that the one thing that the state did not want is to highlight such a protest as being on the runway, because the runway is, you might say, the centre of an airport, and that if you're on the runway, planes cannot land, and if planes cannot land, it means is that planes, the whole aviation global network have got to be told that Shannon is not a safe place to land. So we then, October the 7th, is that we were arrested. Nothing happened. And so to make sure that we were going to be arrested the second time and have our day in court, we then went on the court the second time, which is why in June we're having this. Anyway, so this is an open letter I decided to write just to test the atmosphere, which I gave to Alan Shatter and also put it on in the media. And so this is it. On October the 7th, 2012, I was arrested on the runway as part of the Drone Campaign Network Week of Action and held for 3 hours at the Garda station at Shannon. I'm still waiting to be charged. I want to know why I'm waiting to be charged. I was told that 2 aircrafts had been delayed because of my presence. The question I want to ask is, am I going to be charged? The reason I want to be charged is because the open court is the only public space left where my questions concerning the whole role of Shannon in aiding and abetting the US military. It is a civilian airport, and yet there is no transparency to monitor or inspect suspected rendition aircraft passing through Shannon. There is no transparency or inspection of cargo suspected of transporting munitions. The use of Shannon Airport to support the US occupation of a foreign state is indefensible, as its role in the CI kidnapping and torture operations. Even more worrying is the likelihood that US may now be playing a part in the US drone unmanned serial vehicle attacks in Pakistan and other parts of the world. We now know, of course, is that they are. The use of drone strikes by the US flouts international law and may encourage other nations to follow suit, according to Christoph Haynes, UN Special Investigation on Extrajudicial Killings. In June 2012, he told the UN conference in Geneva that some of the attacks may constitute war crimes and that the US needs to be held legally accountable for the use of armed drones. What compounds it now is the new head of the CIA, John Brennan, who was the architect of the secret and deadly drone programs. And in actual fact, the CIA now has become a quasi-military base, waging war in secret and only by its own rules. So that was sent off and put into a public thing. And so therefore, when we were on the second time, is that they have charged us, which is what we wanted, of course, because it's only in the open court that we can actually talk about these things. Which I think the courts are the last place where we can really debate these things with the state. I think it's very important. Now, the other thing that we did do is that wrote to Michael D. Higgins. And that was to invite him in the court appearance of the 11th of September, but realize in your position you cannot do so. We are summoned to court for interfering with the proper use of the airport. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the word proper in the above context would mean suitable or appropriate or correct. But is it appropriate for military planes carrying armed soldiers and heavy weaponry and conveying tortured prisoners through a civilian airport situated in a country that prides itself on a traditional military neutrality? We entered the Shannon runway to demand Ireland seek peaceful solutions to the military conflicts. The US has embroiled us via Shannon Airport. Both the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, which were illegal under international law, could have been and could be solved peacefully. The same is true for the ongoing drone wars being conducted by Washington in Pakistan, Yemen and Somalia. Now intervention in Syria is imminent. You called on people to conduct conversations in public places as part of active citizenship in Ireland. On the 7th of October, that is exactly what my colleague Niall Farrell and I did on Shannon Airport runway. The summoning to the court gives us another opportunity to conduct a similar conversation, and the so-called offence we are accused of, that we did interfere with the proper use of the airport, Shannon. We think this is of national importance. You are well qualified in this field, and indeed you were elected president on your record of human rights and your denunciation of the use of Shannon by the US military. It could be part of the preparations leading up to 1916 commemorations. The Easter Rising was both a blow for Irish independence and against Ireland's involvement in imperialist war. James Connolly, the founder of your party, the Labour Party, was shot, executed because of his opposition to imperial war. Today, there's overwhelming abhorrence in the US, UK, France and worldwide. Imperialist wars cause utter devastation. Our planet is now in mortal danger. War perpetuates war. With this in mind, now is the time to also bring to the forefront of Irish consciousness Francis Shees Skeffington, passive feminist and supporter of Irish suffragettes, who was shot for his belief and values. The beliefs and values as a pacifist were a crank in a small engine that causes revolution. We are a small country, and we could be the crank in the revolution to make wars obsolete. Under Article 29 of the Irish Constitution, our action was proper and correct. Paragraph 2 of this article states, Ireland affirms its adherence to the principle of the Pacific settlement of international disputes by international arbitration or judicial determination. This is the time in history we have this window. Public opinion has turned against military incursions in Ireland. Now that Ireland takes the lead in forbidding any military flights through any of our airports and airspaces. The fact that the arguments for keeping Shannon open is that we lose jobs is both untrue and obscene. We are perpetuating the ideology of blood money jobs. It is desensitizing the people to reality. Members of Raystorm some years ago at the Assembly voted against the use of Shannon by the military. The poets and artists of Ireland have said no. You, Michael, are a poet and know the story of Mad Sweeney. When he voted in the sport of war, madness descended upon him. That madness is still with us until another poet breaks the spell, and that could be you.